All right, everybody, welcome to our February AMA, our first one of 2022. We have a few folks who are still joining us here last minute on our side, so bear with me while I get them brought in. If I can find Bram in the list, he hasn't joined yet. Okay, never mind, I won't go find him. We have a new face with us this month. We'll let him introduce himself here in just a second. As always, with most of our AMAs, if you have a question you would like to ask us, please put it in the Zoom Q&A box. That will make sure it gets into the right space and we can actually go through the questions and answer them in a timely manner, hopefully get to all of them. We have increased the AMA length from the average hour to a 90-minute now because we always seem to run over by about 15-20 minutes if we have the questions for it. So one or two things is going to happen. We're going to completely have no use for that extra 30 minutes and it was a bad idea to try that, or we'll do 90 minutes and still have a lot of unanswered questions because it's a losing proposition either way, one of the two. So we're going to find out. Let me see here. There is a... Justin has joined us. Now let's go find Bram. I have to find him in the attendees room and promote him.
I apologize. I was holding up Bram. We were talking about hiding Infinity Stones.
Hiding Infinity Stones or hiding Space Marmot hashes?
I mean, they're the same thing, right?
Hopefully everyone had fun with their little scavenger hunt they did. No, it wasn't yesterday. What day is this? The 4th. Tuesday. Wednesday? I don't know what day it is anymore. Wednesday. Groundhog Day. Yeah, that day.
Bram has his hand up, Jay.
Yep, I just found him. Promote to panelist. Boom. There we go. He just needs to accept. And there we go. A wild Bram appears.
All right.
Alrighty.
Here we go.
Perfect.
We have a quorum. So, like I said, if you have questions, please put them in the Zoom Q&A question thing. We'll get through them as we can. If you are watching via YouTube, we do have some folks who are watching that chat and putting things into the Q&A for us, which will help. If you just put it in the YouTube chat, we might get to it, we might not. It depends on if we can see it and get to it in a timely manner in the chatter that's flowing, but we do have people trying to feed them in as well. But if we don't get to it, please don't be offended. It was just, that's the hardest place for us to pull questions from, though we do try. As always, if you have to leave through part of this, it'll be archived on YouTube. You can always watch the rest of it later as well. And I think that does most of the housekeeping stuff. So let's let the new face introduce himself first. Everybody say hello to Jordan.
Hi, Jordan.
Hey, Jordan.
Hey everyone, Jordan Schmidt here. Just joined Chia on the comms side. Bring about 15 years experience in corporate comms, ranging from starting in politics through working at Riot for nearly a decade, Riot Games, and then jumping over to the agency side for a little while, and then coming here. So excited to be here.
Jordan, you'll probably see him posting online occasionally as Adschmidtedly, I think he used, which is a brilliant name. Generally speaking, you won't hear from him all the time, but sometimes. So if you do hear from him, you can trust him. He's our head of corporate communication, so you can definitely trust him. But you won't always hear from him just because if he does his job right, then no one has to hear from him publicly. It's when we all screw up is when you'll hear from him the most. All right. Anyone else have anything they want to add or share before I start going through questions?
Just point out the obvious that the new business white paper is up. For those of you who did not know that was going to end up being the topic, we were striving to get that together and obviously happy to focus on that. But it is an AMA, so happy to also talk about other things too.
Awesome. Alrighty. First question we got is, thanks for the AMA. You're welcome. You are most welcome. That was an easy one. Gene, got a question for you. New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, global exchanges, question marks.
So I think there's two questions hiding in there. We are absolutely aiming to have our equity be listed on either NYSE or NASDAQ here in the US. There's also a process kind of afterwards where we may very well list that equity on things like the Nikkei or the London Stock Exchange, but that'll take a little more time afterwards. If the question is global currency exchanges, the answer is already yes, and we expect to continue to expand that list as well.
Awesome. Kind of sticking to that theme about exchanges and stuff, a common question that's come up a few times now in the past couple of AMAs is regarding our IPO. There's the talk about possibility for early farmers to somehow get in. Is that still something you can say anything about? Still likely to happen? Not happen? What's any updates there?
Well, first I'll start with when everybody asks me when IPO, the answer is that we really can't talk about when IPO until we can. So I apologize that I can't give people more guidance than that, but I can say that we remain on an accelerated timeline to go public. There are two primary ways that we're likely to go public. There's actually three ways, but there's only two that I think we're likely to choose. One is with what's called a special purpose acquisition company, or a SPAC. It's still an IPO. It's not an acquisition. People get confused about that. If we go that direction, it's much harder for us to do what Bram and I'd like to do to be able to get farmers in. But if we go for a more traditional S1 route, we are hoping to be able to allow farmers to be able to buy shares at the offering price in the offering. And this would be with any brokerage account anywhere in the world. So, it's a relatively easy way to access. We obviously cannot guarantee, which one we'll be doing, just because market forces, timing, opportunity drive a lot of this, but it's certainly a factor in how we think about which ones we do.
Okay. So as folks may or may not know, we did a community dev challenge with Clover that started at noon Pacific yesterday and just ended about 3 hours ago. So one of the questions we have is, how many dev challenge submissions were there? It was 76 people signed up. I think a small handful of them were teams of 2 or 3. So I think we had 60 to 70 some odd entrants who took part in the 24-hour challenge. The actual number of submissions, I haven't checked recently. I know in the final minutes counting down, we were somewhere around a dozen, but they had time. So we're not accepting submissions that have like GitHub commits after noon today, but you can submit the URL to your GitHub URL like anytime this afternoon, because a couple wanted to like finish the code and then go back and fill out the form and submit and that kind of paperwork. So I haven't counted since then, but we had around 60 to 70 teams, and I'm expecting to see at least half that submitted, if not more, most likely. We're actually going to do a complete summary on the event in 2 weeks from today. So we're going to spend next week going through the results, picking the winners, contacting them, doing some paperwork logistics with them, and then follow up with a big community announcement the week after, talking about the winners, the projects, showcasing them, all that kind of stuff. So keep an eye out in roughly 2 weeks for updates from that whole kind of thing.
Can you turn the gain down on your mic a little bit? Somebody told me you're a little, like you're squelchy.
We had a whole conversation before this about how I can't win. Like, I can't win. I will always get feedback about one thing.
Too high, too low.
Yeah, there's no winning. I am going to position myself a little bit and turn down the gains. Let's see if that makes a difference. Yeah, I can't win. Anyways, I have a question that I'm going to ask Bram to take a little bit, but before he does, I want to kind of preface it a bit. So the question is, with certain cat projects talking about putting NFTs on the chain, what and when can we expect statements from us on why this is not a good idea or a bad idea? I want to say Bram has thoughts on this. He's kind of half tweeted them a little bit, so I'll let him kind of elaborate on that. But I want to preface it with, yeah, we do have comments about it being a bad idea, but also there are things you should and shouldn't do with the technology. And there are things we will probably give advice on, like maybe you shouldn't do that, here's why. But ultimately, the technology is capable of doing something, and it might be a bad idea because it won't scale to your expectations, and it might let you down later because you're using it the way you shouldn't, or many other things. But ultimately, we don't control the chain. We build it and maintain it, and hopefully it becomes years from now we can disappear overnight and it works fine because the community is taking care of it. But we're not gatekeepers that say what you can and can't have on the chain by some rule of law. It's by technical construct only, really. So we'll share thoughts and advice on these kinds of things, but we're not going to write some kind of like word of God that says you can't do this. We will come after you if you do on a lot of stuff. So I'll now let Bram kind of go into his thoughts on why this is a bad idea.
Yeah, so storing stuff on chain, storing your actual media files on chain, those are ridiculously huge as far as files go. Storing hashes on chain that refer to media files that are stored in reliable ways. That's generally how things should be done. You can physically store your media files on chain. The transaction costs for this are ridiculous. Now, at the moment, transaction costs are basically zero. So multiplying ridiculous by zero is entirely doable. However, this is not going to stay the case for long. And by trying to do this, you're, in addition to being a little obnoxious to everyone running a full node, you're hastening the day when there will be real transaction fees. and you are doing something that simply will have to stop happening when there start being real transaction fees. And it's also just really not very nice to be like forcing the whole network to send around these big files that it really didn't have to send around. So it's not gonna last long. It's not very neighborly. Please don't do that.
And I think a big part of what he says there is important, is that just because you can do I wouldn't say a loophole, but a workaround to do a very creative solution that wasn't meant to be done and it works, you need to really understand what that means long-term scalability, because like he says, it works now. If you're dependent on this system, a year or two from now, it doesn't work anymore the way you want. It's no longer scalable. It's no longer affordable. That's not something we can help you with. We can't fix that for you because it wasn't meant to work that way.
It's kind of like you're getting to your seat in the stadium and it's all clogged up because everyone's taking their seats at once. And you're like, hey, look, the field's wide open. I'll just walk across the play field to get to my seat.
Also, can I add something pragmatic here? If you sell an NFT to somebody and you put the picture in the NFT and it goes on chain, what you've basically done is that 2 years from now, your buyer, when he wants to sell it or she wants to sell it, is hosed. So it's not you, the NFT issuer. You've got to transfer the whole darn thing.
Well, no. It was probably stored on chain when it started, and so now you're just referencing the thing that was already stored on chain.
I don't think the people trying to do this are that sophisticated.
Oh, okay. Well, that would, all right.
You're absolutely right that would be a much better path.
Okay.
A very kind way to put that, Gene.
I'll wave at him. He knows who I'm waving.
So I got another one here, kind of for Bram, kind of not. Someone asked, how do they get the t-shirt Bram's wearing, and merch in general. So first of all, I've never seen the shirt Bram's wearing before. It's actually a new one for me, although someone just messaged me just now in Keybase from our staff, who says he has one and he will sell it for 1 Chia. That sounds a little overpriced to me, but
t-shirt offer file.
Yeah, but I told him, I said, make an offer file.
Yeah, I forget what these shirts were for. Actually, there's something on the back that.
But it is a cool.
I think this was our crew in Europe doing an event. Yeah.
Neil just messaged me. It's from Spain. It was a beach cleanup event. Yeah.
They're limited edition. I will say that.
Yeah. So on that note, because they do ask about swag in general, I know we keep saying swag soon, but we set ourselves with sort of a sword of Damocles over us by doing the holiday NFT, and that was intentional because we are focusing on a lot of big high priority stuff and a lot of these little things that don't have a forced reason to do something less priority because something higher priority keeps causing these things to get punted along. And I didn't want swag getting punted anymore. So I kind of forced our hand by doing that holiday NFT. And we actually have so we had a lot of different moving parts to swag. One of them was design, amongst many other things, and logistics. We actually have an on-staff full-time designer now doing lots of different things, and he's super excited about this. So the people who've been helping me work on this project are now kind of reinvigorated with this new process, and we are actually moving forward faster than we were on the swag conversation for a swag store for people. So yeah, store.chia.net is coming, and there will be really cool stuff on there. And a reminder, if you got a holiday NFT dropped because you found a block sometime in 2021 leading up into and including Christmas Day, then you do have one of those tokens as a 10% discount on the swag that we will eventually sell. So yeah, so the usual answer, swag soon-ish, but it is actually progressing. Unfortunately, you can't get that t-shirt. That's not possible. Justin, your turn. Got a question for you. How are we looking for 1.3?
So I can't speak to how code complete we are. We are one Rails to it. We are very close to releasing the next iteration of our beta for all of that software getting married together and being out and a little easier to use. There's a lot of improvements coming as part of that next beta phase. And then we want to let those changes marry and get the ecosystem testing those improvements along with some things we're going to bring in stream as part of the efforts after we get this next beta phase out. Soon TM, but I would say, the shorter side of that, less than a month, we'll probably have a viable release candidate ready. Maybe a little, 4 or 5 week mark, maybe the top end of that. So, I mean, we're very close right now, and it shouldn't be long before we have the next beta out, and then some time to do that testing. And so that's probably the timeline there.
Awesome. We're gonna boomerang back here for a second, Gene. Someone, anonymous attendee, would like us to know that 100% they are planning to reference a one-time transaction embedded on chain for the NFTs we were discussing. They are that sophisticated.
I will happily take back what I said, but I want to make sure that the ownership is transferable without moving the freaking coin that has the picture in it. Let's just say it that way.
Fair enough. I got a bunch of questions here that kind of all tie together, Gene, so I'll let you sort of just kind of pull from a couple of them that you've tagged and kind of clear them up. They're all questions around involving IPO and pre-farm, things related to that. So, can you confirm that Chia reserves are not going to be shared with VCs, which is a thing that I think we clarified a bit more clear than it was before in the white paper. With the conversion of the safe agreements, are there any time restrictions remaining for filing the IPO that force us to do it at a certain point? And I think there was one more. Oh, yeah. If the IPO is a SPAC, can farmers still purchase shares somehow if we do that plan, or would that kind of prevent that from ever being possible?
So to sort of stop off the top, the whole point of the update was to get out the fact that, as we expected, the items of our investment documents that gave any sort of ability to get Chia to investors were amended out with our most recent fundraise. There is now no way for our investors to get Chia until and unless we get public. And then everyone would have the opportunity, and we'll come back to that point in a second. The other piece of that,
they can buy it on the open market.
Oh yeah, right, exactly. But let's put it this way: the original Chia is owned by only two classes of entities: Chia Network Incorporated and farmers. The secondary market is all farmers. So, but coming back to the point, the question around can a farmer be involved? If we were to do a SPAC, generally there'll be an announcement, and you'll be able to actually purchase shares in the SPAC on the open market. And the way these work is they often kind of trade at about the valuation the deal is going to be done at. So in some ways, it doesn't have the usual pop, but it does give you a window of time in which you could get in and just become a public investor in that entity.
Cool, thank you.
There was one last piece of that was asked that I forgot to answer, which is, are there still timing restrictions? And yes, there are some cash restrictions, but they are limited. But there's no disagreement between our board, management, and our investor base about getting public on an accelerated timeline.
Okay. I'm going to switch gears here just a split second. I've been asked to say 100, and that's the answer. 100. 100. 100. The reason is I had a very long Twitter rant this week because I say 100 when doing voice to text, and my phone always writes it out as WON space 100. And apparently multiple people at Chia this week have messaged me, and the same thing's happened, and I had to go back and edit it. And I'm like, aha, it's not just me, it's the iPhone. It's the iPhone. And people are trying to say, no, it's how you say 100. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's the phone, because it happens to other people too. So.
Supposed to say 1 trillion.
1 trillion.
Mojos.
I will say, when I'm saying 100%, you hear me stress the one, like 100. If I'm saying 100%, I'll stress that one a bit. Man, that might be, I don't know. That seems to be what causes most of it. Anyways.
Siri AMA is now over. Go ahead.
Yep. Yep. I got some. Oh, well, we already answered that. We answered that. And we answered that. Gene. I had a really great one here. Oh, yeah. Justin. Plot file shrink. It's been talked about a lot. Where's that? 1.3? Question mark? When? Question mark?
I don't know if it's going to make it into 1.3. So I just want to stress that this comes up a lot, but this is not going to be a very large shrink of the plot files. It's not like they're going to be, 8% of what they currently are or anything like that. We view this as a housekeeping improvement. It is something that is, as far as I know, still in the works. I know the engineers that have been working on it have kind of bounced back and forth between this and some other responsibilities, and that's kind of what's kind of caused the churn in its release.
This is a little bit outside of Justin's wheelhouse, so I can speak to it a bit more because I've been slowing it down. It's probably going to be, let's say, around 3% thereabouts shrinkage that it'll be able to do. And in the future, the plotters will be able to plot directly to it. So new plots made will just be 3% smaller right off the bat, or possibly more or less, somewhere around there. And it's been slowed down. It's coming out after 1.3, just given how long it's going to take to do things. There's possibly another improvement that's going to come after that, not immediately, that we spent a fair amount of time studying because there's algorithmically non-trivial things in it. And that'll get maybe another like 0.5%, but there is a small chance, say 10-20% chance that will come with a dramatic improvement to the speed of plotting, if that gets in there. But probably not. Anyway, there's this non-trivial thing about compact storage of large permutations that I figured out that Dan Bonet figured out an improvement to that I don't know what he figured out. He's doing a write-up of it now, so that'll be coming out as well. But 1.3 will not have the compactification in it. That'll come out after 1.3, but soon.
Cool, thank you. There is another question in a similar vein that I wanted to give Bram, and I forgot what it was. Oh yes, it was about proof of stake, which sounds like a great Bram topic. There's someone asked the question. They said, we're hearing that proof of stake is turning out to be harder than originally thought.
Well, that's harder than some people originally.
Yeah, meaning it's not yet a secure and effective consensus mechanism for a blockchain. Is this your understanding also, is the question, which I think some of us already know what your understanding is.
If you want to have nightmares, go read up on K agreement. The technical difficulty, there's 2 levels of difficulties with proof of stake. One of them is the fundamental things, that it's not actually distributed. It's a centralized thing weighted by amount of coins everybody has. On top of that, there are some nightmarish technical issues where the technical term of art for them is K agreement. And if you really want to have nightmares, you can read up on that. And they're fundamental deep things where actually you could improve the situation quite a bit by using VDFs. And it's really saying something that the proof of stake systems don't have VDFs and Time Lords in their roadmap plans, because those should be pretty central to getting over their deep technical issues. But it's not. But proof of space is just a better approach to everything because it is true Nakamoto consensus. And even just looking at the purely technical things, we figured out that you need VDFs, and we figured out you should do them on Time Lords, and we figured out how to make all that work. And so we're way ahead of them on those as well.
I'd also add the pragmatic. If anybody wants to see what actually works like in real world, Tron took over Steemit, and it basically ended up being proof of whatever CZ and Brian wanted it to do. Now, that was delegated proof of stake, but the problem is that staking as a service is likely to be very huge and very central. So the staking as a service providers will decide the future of your blockchain.
Before I get to the next one, just want to remind folks, if you are putting questions in the Zoom chat, you're putting questions in the wrong place. I'm casually glancing at it, but not very closely. Please make sure you use the Q&A button and submit them as a Q&A question. Thank you. I got 2 for you, Gene, that kind of dovetail together nicely. The first is, are there any current efforts to support Chia on the Ledger Nano X or any other hardware wallet? Common question, hardware wallets when? And instead of the usual first question of the day being Coinbase when, we have a slightly more on-topic question of, are any exchanges getting any closer to supporting BLS G2 for Chia?
The answer to both is yes. So as we kind of expected, the hardware community has been implementing the IETF standard and getting it more complete. We don't have some news today, but I can tell you that both the HSM side and the individual hardware wallet side will have some fun things happening in the next couple months.
Yeah, somewhat tangential to that, I believe I mentioned on Twitter, we're considering doing a soft fork to add opcodes, to specifically adding in G2 operations and pairing operations for BLS 12381. We already have G1 because we knew we needed it for Taproot. Maybe I should have just on principle included the other things. I should have, would have, could have, blah, blah, blah. But the reason we're considering this is actually it allows for some unbelievably powerful zero knowledge constructions to be done once that's done. So we're considering that. Also, totally unrelated, considering a condition to assert a value coming from the chain as a random oracle beacon because, well, we already put in all the work to make it so that you have auditable randomness from the chain, so might as well let people access it. That's controversial for involved technical reasons.
Okay. So one I'm gonna take real quick here. Where's the best documentation that explains log items in the debug log? So that's actually an interesting topic because it's kind of relevant to me. We actually have right now. So obviously, if you go to docs.chia.net, that's sort of a landing page to all of our documentation across all things, whether it's Chia Network, the company, Chia development of the product itself, or developing for Chia with Chia Lisp and other softwares. You can kind of find a path towards everything from there. And one of the things we lead out to there is some of our documentation on GitHub about the actual Chia blockchain code repository itself. Admittedly, the exact specifics of all of the different things that can be written to our logs is not heavily documented there. However, you may have seen in our community in the last week and a half a person show up who is our new ecosystem support engineer. And we actually have another one I'm making an offer to next week. And we are beginning to roll out more of a developer relations team sort of exercise of people who are doing various things. And one of the things they're working on right now is I'm having them kind of review that kind of documentation and look for, they as people from the community we've picked who have built stuff against Chia, what is not clearly documented in a way. And they're going to work with our internal documentation team who helps build that documentation and kind of robust some of that, make that stuff a bit more robust. And the log file is actually one of the things we talked about because a lot of third-party tools that monitor farming and monitor your systems tend to rely on the info and debug log, mostly info. And so we want better documentation for that for folks. They're actually working on that right now. So you'll find a little bit there, not a lot, but there's more coming soon in that space. Gene, I got a fun tax season question for you. So for IRS purposes, how can one determine the price of Chia at the exact moment a win happened during farming? And they kind of go in a bit more wanting a better understanding of what's behind the real-time prices we find online. How is that kind of derived and understood? Especially now, given that offers are a thing and they are between individuals and there's no homogenized tracking of that data.
So I'm not your accountant. I am not your lawyer. Chia Networks is not your accountant. Chia Networks is not your lawyer. Before transactions, you're going to have a relatively difficult challenge figuring out exactly what you should do from a tax perspective. This is one of those places where I would say you need a professional. To the extent that you are not finding professionals, Keybase, people can kind of offline DM you, people who know this space and work on it. After transactions, you actually have a number of Hong Kong and Singapore exchanges that were actually trading real Chia for real values, and those prices are generally aggregated pretty well. The coin market cap infrastructure and all the various pieces kind of flow back and forth. We do believe that there is some arbitrage going on between, say, Hashgreen DEX and those exchanges, and we expect that to actually tighten over time, and that's how effectively your peer-to-peer trading gets reflected in the on centralized exchange prices. So, that's going to get better and better. I could certainly think that in the last few weeks it may not be that great because it's only been up for 3 weeks, 2 weeks, something like that. But anyway, now there is some interesting public policy activity here. In other realms, like real farmers don't pay when the corn sprouts; they pay when they go to market and sell it. A specific staker has been trying to sue for a refund to get that, and right now the IRS basically is trying to buy their way out of the case. We'll see if it goes forward or not, but there's some chance that the rules may change here. To the extent you're all concerned about it, I would give you this piece of advice. Be very straight up with the IRS that you did make something. And then to the extent that you feel like you're overpaying, save your records so that you can later go get a refund should the legal interpretation of how this all works change. And oddly enough, the IRS has to pay you interest.
One other thing to add, again, we are not your accountants, we are not your lawyers, but something I have learned from dealing with an accountant, especially an accountant who has to take care of taxes for me in multiple states, is that he says time and time again, he would rather deal with the IRS 100 times than a state tax board once, because the IRS is actually incredibly understandable. They understand people are human and they're totally fine with mistakes. They will work with you gladly on mistakes. It's omissions and subterfuge they don't like, but mistakes, you make a mistake, if you're honest about it, they'll work with you on it.
Also, valuation disagreement is so much easier because you can only be subject to civil fines. You can't be put in jail. But if you don't report it, well, you can get in silver shackles.
Yeah, yeah. So got a question for Jordan. It's funny. I saw this. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna give us a Jordan, and then he actually tagged it as I want to answer this, and I was like, well, now I can't surprise him with it because he saw it. But Jordan, how do you like the jump to the crypto world after over a decade in the gaming world?
I obviously they're very different, but I think that the thing that drew me to crypto and blockchain is the same thing that drew me to gaming, which is it's a lot of really smart people trying to do something really unique. There's a lot of agility, a lot of expertise, and a lot of interesting work being done. So I really like the challenges, and it's similar to gaming. I think that there's also a lot of folks are really, will say they're bought in, right? Like they see it as the future, right? Gaming 10 years ago is not gaming today, right? So a lot of people saw that and said, this is the future of how people are going to recreationally spend their time. And I think a lot of people are looking at blockchain and crypto now and saying, this is the future of finance. This is the future of how we're going to handle data. And so it's really exciting to be at the forefront of these technological evolutions.
And to kind of, for those who don't know, before I joined Chia, I was in the game industry for about 16 years as well. So it was a huge jump for me too. And it's very different, but also the same stuff, just in a different way. Yeah. Also, when it comes to interacting with the community, a lot of people joke about the crypto world having some very spicy people in the community, some very spicy people on social media. Jordan and I can both attest. None of y'all are come even remotely close to a League of Legends player. You just don't trust us. So we've got a few questions here. I forgot to preface with this subject beforehand, and I probably should have. On the subject of NFTs and our NFT standard, we're not really ready to talk about that yet because you may have seen on Trello, it has popped up as kind of a little footnote in a few places on our Trello, on the public roadmap, and a few other places. We do have some team members who are actively working on figuring out and charting a course to what our NFT standard will be. However, we're not ready to talk about it yet because there's a lot of stuff I need to kind of codify and plan, and we want to wait until we kind of have a whole plan for all this to share with you. So I can't go into a lot of detail on those questions until we're ready to kind of dive in it, and we'll have those folks probably on a relevant AMA or even maybe a focused Q&A for that reason. But two questions that I did kind of want to lightly touch on that was one, clearing that up in general. But then the other question I had was basically people were asking me, first of all, if you see right now, there's a lot of people out there who are offering cats as a token to exchange for an NFT. And someone has asked, like, is that possible? Like, is that a thing they're going to be able to do successfully? Or have we all just gotten tokens for no reason? And the answer is, yeah. That concept of exchanging a rare cat for an NFT layer is totally doable, depending on the technical competencies of the people who have made this. But also bear in mind, we did it too. We offered everyone a rare token for the holidays that you can redeem later for an NFT. We would not have done that if we didn't think it was possible. And they're all just kind of emulating our lead on that one. As a matter of fact, I think we were the first to do that. Then everyone's kind of like, wait, this is a thing? And then they all began kind of doing it. But yeah, it's both possible from a technical point of view of the blockchain, because these are all just very smart things that using Chia Lisp can do stuff, but also a user can just build a website or a tool that you take inputs and you create outputs in another as a bridge kind of thing. There's a lot of ways smart people can do this. So don't worry about like, is that concept followable and are bad? Now, an individual organization who's doing this, you want to make sure if you're going to spend money on these rare cat tokens that you're actually backing the right horse. We're not in a position to tell you who is and isn't trustworthy, but make sure you do your due diligence, your homework on will they actually follow through on that. But on a technical level, totally doable, totally possible. And then, yeah, as to talking about the actual NFT standard roadmap, can't really go into that. But one of the questions that was also asked was, can we explain the difference between the two? And without the standard codified, I can't really explain the technical difference on that, or more to the point, the team building it doesn't want us to because they haven't finalized that standard. But there's kind of a similar concept. I mean, some of these cats are a one of one, which is basically an NFT just as a cat, which is probably silly, but I can't make fun of that because I made a cat that is a one of one. That is the golden Chia that everyone keeps asking about. No, I won't tell you anything about the golden Chia, what it is, how you get one, how you get part of one, what it's for. No one here at Chia and myself even knows what it exists or why it exists. I just made it, and that's all I can tell you, and the rest is a secret. Sorry. I had another one here I thought for Jordan, but I guess not. I was wrong, I guess. We do have a question. Congratulations on our patent award that we got this week. Can we speak a little bit to why it was important to be granted that patent if we wanted to make it open source? And I think this is a great chance for you, Gene, to talk about not just why we patent the things we do and make them open and the thought process behind that, but also the alliance that we're a part of as well.
Yeah, so this is 100% defensive. In the modern era, software patents have become a war, and it's not a good war, and it's good for nobody. But what we're able to do by patenting all of our core technologies that are patentable is to make sure that no patent troll later can come in and try to muck with all of the open source we're all building. And we've taken that to the second layer by pooling our patents with the Crypto Open Patent Alliance that includes companies like Meta and Block and ourselves and Coinbase and Gemini and Uniswap. And the whole idea here is that as we build up an entire corpus of intellectual property, no one like rogue chain or rogue patent troll can come in and stop progress here. It also really does a good job of making it harder to get a patent by making it very clear that a lot of these concepts are already patented. We can't see somebody trying to make a Me Too that would then somehow, stop forward progress. So, the Apache license means that you, as long as you're using our software, get a full patent license. As long as you don't sue us, you still have a patent license. But if you do sue us, you immediately lose your copyright and your patent to our software. So please don't. Plus, you will then get the entire patent portfolios of the entire group of the Crypto Open Patent Alliance, digging through their IP, figuring out which parts you're infringing, and it will not be pretty for you. So we love that. We think it's a good deterrent. We hope to never have to use that, but we did want to make sure that this stuff is correctly patented defensively, so it takes it out of the warfare.
Alrighty. Got two more related ones here for you, Gene, to each other. Not that. Can you explain any use cases for the upcoming DID wallet on Chia, and also DID in general? Come out soon? ?
Yeah, I'll take the second part first, and then I think you certainly see much of our DID standard in the first half. Exact date harder to call. That's a Paul question, and Paul's not here. But there's a couple use cases. I'll give three. There's more. One thing is we're going to use DID as an ownership model for things like NFTs, so that you don't necessarily use your private key, you use the DID, and therefore you can have reputation and some other things. So there's that. Also, we like DIDs because a lot of places today where you would otherwise use your private key, where it'd be more interesting to use your DID, and that way your key management is somewhat separate from your access controls. That lets you more easily recover from losing a key, those kinds of things. That's exciting. The thing I'm really excited about is that you can have your Chia asset token self-enforce certain rules. So it could, for example, say that I'm only available for sale or transfer to someone who has joined the group of accredited investor. Go ahead.
Well, there's a little bit of restricting cats that way is actually quite a bit of work. So it's kind of a low priority until someone important really wants it. The NFTs are pretty easy to restrict in that sort of way.
Yep.
So slightly different approaches to the two sets of things.
Yep. But fundamentally, this is to give much richer functionality to what you can do with an asset token ultimately.
For DIDs, actually, the general roadmap of how NFTs are going to work is that an NFT remembers which DID owns it at the current time. And when it's sold, it is told by the old owner and the new owner that it's being transferred and what the new price is. And then it does a payment back to the original issuer of some fraction of that. That's the enforcement on chain. So DID standard, which is mostly just vanilla singletons in the new format, not the old singletons used by the pooling protocol, but the new one. DID is mostly just a raw one of those, but it's necessary to invoke those for the way we're planning to make to make NFTs work.
Alrighty. Before I ask the next question, I want to point out that after being asked to turn down my microphone gain because it was too high, now someone in chat is telling me that my gain is too low, and I took it one notch down. So I can't win. Gene, how are the Asics coming along on that subject?
So our ASIC development is on track. It's kind of weird to have a project so on track. We are going to see a significant speed up from the current fastest Time Lord. We're hoping to have silicon in our hands probably around Thanksgiving this year. I caveat that with it is a strange and wild world out there in the world of developing silicon, so that certainly could move around a bit. But we're basically on schedule for what we'd hope to have, and are seeing a hardware ASIC that is going to be quite good. One thing I think we've kind of changed our opinion on, and I kind of want to start to circulate this, is that there's only going to be a few hundred of these. It could be somewhere between 50 and 150 to give a better sense. Each one is a full Time Lord, so each one has all three VDFs in it. We will probably actually have an application process to make sure that these Time Lords are getting in the hands of researchers and people who need them in our ecosystem, so that we kind of get these in the right places at the right time. And I think Bram wants to add something.
We're probably going to have FPGA hardwares considerably in advance of ASICs. Unfortunately, the FPGAs are actually going to be a little slower than IFMA, because it turns out IFMA is really fast. But that will allow us to test out our integration and make sure we're ready to have a system that you can just plug in the ASICs into once they're up and running.
Alrighty, gonna do a fun little softball question, then do a spicy one. Gene, how big's Chia Network staff at this point? What's kind of our projection for where the company might be like 5 months from now, both what we're trying to do and the company itself?
I believe the number I put in the business white paper was about 65. It's a little outdated. It's, I think, 70 or 71. We were hiring quickly. As you see in the business white paper, it is about 60% development. So development continues to be the majority of both the company and the hires. I don't think we're going to double in 5 months again from here, so I don't think 140. But it would not at all surprise me if we get into the high 90s, low hundreds by 5 months from now. At this point, we're really kind of fleshing out the various organizations, so still hiring engineers in GLISP, in backend infrastructure, developer relations, but at the same time, our go-to-market team is now kind of waiting to build revenue. They'll grow with revenue, but that's kind of independent of the rest of the company. But we've really filled most of the really critical positions at this point. Obviously, still careers out there, still looking for great developers especially. Please make sure you check the career button at the bottom of the page. But it's nice. We're at a good manageable size. We're a global footprint, and have most of the team we need to go execute for the next year or two.
All right. And Bram, got a question for you. Do we have any comments or thoughts on the Solana wormhole incident?
Yeah, so we're in the process right now on working on getting wrapped Ethereum and Bitcoin onto Chia. It's as Chia cats, because we view this as a good thing to have happen. We've been there's multiple levels of doing this. One of them is where it's federated, so there's someone who's just an issuer who owns themselves a certain amount of stuff and just issues the cat directly. Another one is where there's some thing on Bitcoin or Ethereum where people send their funds to, and then it comes out on the other side, and then it can be sent back again. We want all these things to have happen. The simpler thing is probably coming first. But definitely do want to do something where there's a tunnel, a bridge that's done that anyone can provide the liquidity for, because they have it already themselves, and that causes the issuance with some trusted signers who are running the bridge. We have been planning this out, figuring out exactly what we want, evaluating vendors to work with. There are some recent events that we're going to be taking into consideration when deciding which technology vendors to partner with when providing these solutions.
All right. Gene, two things. First, the easy one. Back to the subject of our staff and hiring for the future. Our good friend from YouTube, the Poor Investor, would like you to know that he can get really great coffee for you. So
Great.
And then more seriously, the database V2 stuff we've talked about that people seen a lot of PRs for and progress in GitHub, is that going to be included in 1.3?
So it will, but it will not be the default. So you will be able to run in the new mode, but you will not immediately be put into that mode. We are going to be asking people to do that because we want to get some real feedback from the various operating systems and situations to make sure all of that is good and sound before we start switching people. You can do a while farming migration. You have a little bit of downtime at the very end when you switch over, but you'll be able to migrate a V1 to a V2 database as well, so you're not going to have to go sync from scratch.
All right. One of your favorite subjects, one of those things that you can just pull on top of your head instantly, and it's magically wired to your brain, and we don't know how. What's the full node count look like right now?
223,000. Am I low? High?
See, he's weird about that. Justin, you want to check his math?
I'm looking.
I can tell you the answer. He's close. It's like 211 and 765 or something like that.
It's uncanny
It's
how
been bouncing
accurate
over the last
it
2 days. Anyway,
can be.
We're going to have a dashboard made public on this.
Yeah,
soon.
so about that. Where's that at, Justin? Where's that public dashboard for that kind of?
Yeah.
metrics at?
There are some other things we've discussed today that I'm not really allowed to talk about that I've been working on. They're a little higher precedence. So yeah, I mean, eventually, yes, it will probably be after we get these other big things out the door. It is something that we are aware that people are looking for. We are at the point now where we're very comfortable with this platform. The decisions and things that still need to exist for us to get it out to you, we need to take what we currently have, winnow it down into usable operational information for the layperson, because there's a lot of stuff that's like really technical in these dashboards you guys probably don't really care about. And then like get some good documentation out there of like what these numbers mean. Because like if I show you here's what the mempool is, and then like here's our 3% to either end trend line, you probably won't understand what those numbers are unless you have like a degree in mathematics or understand like some high level calculus. So we could just explain that stuff better. And so it's like user experience that they're working on now, as well as like finding how to host this so it's scalable and making it cacheable so that like, the data isn't like, super stale. Once we get that stuff together, it'll be out shortly. So I don't know, a couple months probably is a legitimate timeline for that.
and can you comment on the distribution of nodes?
Yeah. So we are very well globally distributed. No one nation has a majority of the nodes. Our biggest participants are China, the United States, Russia, Germany, and Canada. No, hold on, let me expand.
I think it is.
Canada, and then which country code is TH? I don't recognize the country code TH.
Turkey, right?
Yes, Turkey.
Turkey's
That's it.
TH, yeah.
Yeah. So those are our top 5, and then or top 6 rather, and then I mean our largest participants are obviously the United States and China. But no nation holds a plurality of nodes. Something I want to mention because it doesn't get talked about a lot, and you give me the soapbox for it. We have more nodes in like the southern hemisphere of the United States than a lot of blockchains have in the world. So I mean, like we have a huge adoption in places that there are only a couple 100,000 computers in these nations, and they've got maybe 1,000 Chia nodes or a couple dozen Chia nodes. I think that's like a huge statement to like how well our software performs on low scale nodes and how big of a deal this is for people that aren't in the Eurocentric, America-centric economic sphere. And so I don't know, I just think that's really neat. And it kind of makes this like, crazy stuff we talk about kind of reality a little bit for me.
I'd also like to point out that, before the holidays and after the holidays, the actual Chinese percentage has gone back up. I personally think it's that people have been shifting out of Bitcoin and Ethereum and into Chia farming in China.
China is our largest growth market right now, as far as like adding nodes daily.
One of our more worldly traveled staff members has messaged me that we're all completely know nothing about what we're talking about, and TH is actually Thailand. For some reason, I could have swore Thailand was something different. Like TH, like my first brain went to Thailand. I was like, no, Thailand's not TH. That's too obvious. I remember it's actually blah, blah, blah. But apparently I should have said something after all. My first instinct was right. It's Thailand, not Turkey. I know Turkey isn't TK. So I don't know what Turkey is then, though. I know it's weird. Anyways, where was I? Yes, everyone's favorite topic, the dust storms, which aren't really an issue anymore. Gene, are there further improvements coming in 1.3 specifically targeted at assisting with the performance issues with lower powered nodes to help alleviate those further?
Quite a few. There was actually a significant improvement that we found at the very last minute, or at least 1.2.11, that we decided was too close to release to have confidence in. It's been in main for quite a while. There are quite a few other things. I have joked to the community that we are going to continue to find boneheaded things we were doing, like checking every block twice. Some of those things are now in, and so you will see a pretty nice performance improvement from 1.3 overall. Obviously, the new light wallet's in there, so that's another huge performance increase of the light wallet not having to go grind against your node all the time. And the database improvements actually may be a significant improvement to overall performance, especially as we're recommending that you use an SSD for the blockchain database.
All right.
We have a fair amount of stuff that's just piled up since the 1.2.11 release, just stuff.
Yeah, there was a Reddit thread about this today that I kind of chat with folks on. They were like, there hasn't been a release since November. It's like, well, depends how you look at it. We have all these beta releases, but more importantly, that's because we're trying to focus less on getting a release out every few weeks and more on getting you a release with a meaty group of changes that we have as much understanding as possible is stable and as good or better than the last release, rather than
we also got the light wallet release out, and then needed to upstream that, and that's been a process. And so there was the light wallet release in the middle there. So
exactly. Yeah, that was kind of the point I made with them, is we've had these beta light walls, we've had these other things. It's production releases is not a great metric to go by, especially because faster is not better. Jordan,
but we are working on getting our release process consolidated on a single.
Jordan had an amazing quote he gave me earlier this week, and that was steady is smooth and smooth is fast. Let's see here. Gene got one for you, back tailing off some of that white paper stuff about the pre-farm. White paper talks about how the pre-farm will help Chia devs in the ecosystem. How does that actually work? As laid out in the white paper, the Chia cultivation grant program is a way to help the community, but their question is, how does it help that? And the answer, of course, is it doesn't. They're two separate things. But do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Well, it does. So the cash we're going to be using to pay people in the grant program or invest in their new projects comes directly from the fact that we can raise equity against the pre-farm. So the pre-farm is one of the major value drivers that it makes it very easy for us to go to investors and raise fiat. And we like that better. A lot of projects will hand you their coin. And that means that, of course, if you want to buy groceries in the United States with it, you have to sell it. And we don't really think that's a great idea. We would rather the pre-farm sit there and we'll take the dilution and we'll raise the fiat and give you the fiat to go develop with. Now, after we're public, we will probably start using the pre-farm a little bit more for more fun things like our developer challenge. This past 24 hours would be fun to give you, 100 Chia and some fiat, right? So that you kind of get a piece of it. But as we say in the white paper, we really can't do anything with the strategic reserve, the Chia that we own, until we're public.
All right. I'm trying to scroll through here. I gotta find ones that you guys have actually tagged. Here we go. This person says, I've seen material on your site about Chia being attractive to people with unused space on their computers, but the economics, even if you're using a pool, seem right now to not make that make sense. They want to kind of hear the counter argument to that. Is it actually still viable for a person to take unused space and join a pool and farm?
It absolutely is. Our farmers take their farmer view of all of this, where they're doing a spreadsheet and working very hard to figure out exactly what their turn is, and often undervalue their hardware, but that's a digression. For other people who are normal, they're going to be buying storage boxes off the shelf that say, hey, you could potentially win a lottery if you press this button and let us manage your space for you on your behalf. It is a very different thing to pitch people on securing the financial future on the chance that they might win a block. And when our software is much better than it currently is to be able to actually manage your free space, then it's going to be a very different value proposition for the other few million nodes we want.
Alrighty. Let's see. Who wants to take this one? Kind of, what are some of the next big things we're going to be releasing? People know that we got the light wallet coming out. That's coming. We just did offers. What are some things that we probably haven't talked about a whole lot, or maybe just our footnotes on Trello, that are some new releases coming that we want people to know about?
Well, we're definitely heading in the NFT direction, as we've mentioned, but there's not much more we can say about that. DIDs are definitely now getting on the radar, as is our custody and control pieces. So we're going to be building the tools that we want to use to custody our own pre-farm. And we think those are going to be very useful tools for both normal people, farmers, and businesses. So that's one of the big next kind of things.
Yeah, that is something where it will be possible for people outside of Chia to audit not the exact keying material that we have, but the audit the rules and requirements of moving the pre-farm. You'll be able to see and watch as it moves yourself using the same tools that we will. And we're also going to be productizing that for everyone. But the among the rules that's going to be enforcing are that the pre-farm can only be moved at a certain rate. So it will actually be enforced on chain that we can only pull out funds on a preset schedule.
Okay. Let's talk about the actual blockchain itself a second. The blocks in the white paper, we mentioned about how it's designed that 1/3 of the blocks are transaction blocks. What are the other blocks for then, actually?
They are to add weight to the thing, increase the security of it so that people can't reorg it, which it does a few things. It increases how quickly everything gets buried, so you're sure it's not going to get reorged. It provides more reward events so that the farming rewards are less noisy. And also because the next transaction block is the next one that's a certain amount of time after the last one that was a transaction block, it makes it so that the noise between the noise and the amount of time between blocks is much less. That you get, blocks are come in very rarely more than like usually at about a minute, but very rarely more than like 3 minutes. Where in Bitcoin that happens, the block comes in every 10 minutes, but more than half an hour happens all the time. So those are the benefits of it working in that way.
Yeah, each transaction block is on average 52 seconds apart. And one of the more novel attacks against our blockchain versus other blockchains is a farmer bribery attack, where you would try to get like the last X number of farmers to change the foliage, what you won and what you lost. Adding those individual blocks every 18.75 seconds means that, like, between transaction blocks, you can't just bribe the former farmer. You got to find the 2 other farmers that came between.
Well, it's a little complicated because you have the foliage is only signed by the people who made the foliage blocks. So it is these slightly different attacks. For a complete reorg of doing an attack where you changed who was putting stuff on, that requires a conspiracy of everyone. But you do potentially have the ability to do just a foliage reorg for a little while, but then most people who are making new blocks are going to get really mad at you and not let you do that reorg later. But that gets a little involved. So the exact nature of the attacks.
Yeah.
All right. One of our most recent features, offer files. They currently don't support the ability to partially fulfill an offer. Is that something we've considered and chose not to do, or are considering maybe adding later, or could add later, or is there a reason behind that?
It's more work. I mean, you can make an offer file that says whatever you want. So you can make an offer file that just gives a formula. It says, I'm going to spend this amount to get at least this exchange rate back for it, or say I'm going to spend up to this amount for exactly this exchange rate coming back for it. Those are things that are completely possible to do. We just haven't done them yet. It's more work, more logic for things to understand them and deal with them.
Okay. We talk about in the white paper. Go ahead, Justin.
I just wanted to give a point of order. If you've asked a question, you don't have to keep asking it. Like we see your questions.
Yeah, there's a couple that popped up a couple times. Yeah. That said, if you've asked the questions in the Q&A form, we see your questions. If you're asking them in chat, we may very well miss them, unfortunately. So we'll do our best. In the white paper, we talk about how there's Chia Network, the company, and a lot of people didn't realize we have a European subsidy. We also talk about a Singaporean subsidy eventually in the future. Some folks have asked, what's the situation? Is it going to be opening soon? Is it a new thing soon?
So we do have a European subsidiary in Switzerland. It owns half the pre-farm. Primarily, these are risk mitigation techniques to make sure that we don't have all of our eggs in one basket. If there had not been a global pandemic, we already would have a Singapore subsidiary. However, we already have one employee whose family lives in Singapore, and we have another employee who's moving to Singapore here shortly. I think when that employee moves, we will likely open that Singapore subsidiary for actual operations day to day. I would not be surprised that sometime between now and the end of the year, we'll actually start to hire folks out of the Switzerland subsidiary. But right now, most everybody's just employed directly by Chia Network or is a independent contractor because they're an international customer or a partner. International employee. Well, full-time employee equivalent is what I call them in the white paper. Sorry.
All right. There was, where did it go? I had a good one here. Bram, a few weeks back, you kind of crowdsourced some thought and you wanted the people's kind of feedback on maybe what is the best path for us to take involving a potential soft fork for the divide error. Do you want to talk a bit more about that particular problem and about our actual thoughts around software mechanics?
Oh, okay. So we're doing a bug fix soft fork. Bitcoin in the early days had a lot of soft forks. Bug fix soft fork. So soft fork in general is there's something that was technically out and you're making it not allowed now. When I say bug fix soft fork, I mean something where there was some behavior that's just clearly busted, just wrong. I mean, it's specified clearly, but it's just wrong behavior. So you just make that not be a valid thing to do. That whole code path, it just can't be hit at all anymore. So it turns out we had some problems with the division operator. Our div mod operator is fine, partially because div mod's a lot easier to run tests of, and it's a lot clearer what its semantics are supposed to be. What we're doing is we're making it so that division continues to work, but not if the operands are negative. So in the future, if either operand to a division operator is a negative number, it just pukes and says, no, you can't do that. I think that's normally what people want. That normally when you're doing division, you only want the two things to be positive. If you do want the negatives behavior, you still have diff mod that works. That's always worked appropriately. So we're already rolling out disallowing it in the mempool, and at some point in the future that it will become a consensus thing that blocks are not allowed to have the negatives in the division operator, not just stuff in the mempool. It appears to be people almost never hit that accidentally, but we're being extremely conscientious about not having weird edge cases in how CLVM works.
Alrighty. I like this question. This is an interesting one. Bram and Gene, when it comes to adoption of Chia, what keeps you guys up at night?
The main issue we're having right now is on-ramps, on-ramps and off-ramps. So that's obviously a big focus for us right now, but also just building real technology, like what are cryptocurrencies actually good for? How can we build real value here? And the idea is that the value of Chia will follow that. So we have lots of initiatives going on right now that we've been talking about. I am actually very excited about our internal custody solution because I've always been excited about working on great internal custody, about just great custody solutions, because that is something that cryptocurrencies can actually do better than banks do right now. And these types of solutions should be used internally within all kinds of corporations. I think someday, the Fedwire will offer CLVM as possible semantics for your deposits that are kept on Fedwire, and that will be much, much better than the current thing. That is something that would totally make sense for CLVM, and you absolutely would not even consider doing that with EVM at all, no way. I am very excited about working on custody solutions. Custody solutions are things that aren't sexy because they don't make numbers go up, but that in a sane world, the whole entire banking industry would be super excited about this. I'm hoping that partially once they do understand how things can be done better, they will get excited about it. But that's a process. So first steps for us is our internal custody solution and dog food it ourselves so that we can show other people the way.
Yeah, and look, when we were both asked this question right before, I think transaction launch at an AMA, I think our answer to that was adoption, period. And the nice part is I don't feel that's our answer to this anymore. Between the World Bank, Costa Rica, the other things we have in the pipeline, what we're doing in DeFi, I think it's very clear that adoption is occurring. By the way, loving the community on Twitter, on Keybase, on Reddit. You can see and feel the momentum. I think one of the things I worry about a little bit is that the go-to-market team is a little too successful, and Bram needs to get L2 working faster than he'd like. But we've also been doing some things around that, so we're kind of excited about being in a better position on that.
All right.
We have plans around L2. We had some discussions around it.
We'll talk more about it, but I'm very happy we've been able to kind of figure out what our path there looks much more tangibly, so that we know that we can get first to the good problem of having fees, and then to the even better problem of being specific about which fees should go on which chain.
Alrighty. So with the launch of offers, we had a couple different things like OfferBin and Hashgreen and Stably. Stably being notable because it's the first solid on-ramp, off-ramp that we enabled with the stablecoin. However, as folks have mentioned in some of the questions here, it's been a bit hit or miss on the experience for end users with Stably due to technical problems on their side. Are there any alternative paths to buying and selling Chia directly against offers that we can talk about that are coming, or any future plans in that space?
Well, obviously, Stably is expecting to add both wrapped Bitcoin and wrapped Ethereum. Also, I would like to say kind of two things about the Stably situation. Some of that is on us with a light wallet Weta. It's been challenging for them in certain situations, and so we're making sure they're getting good support there. But also, I think a lot of people underestimate the demand in our community for all these things. It's a lot of crypto projects, even well-known ones, don't really have 50, 60,000 people kicking around on a daily basis who want to go do something. So I think that's been a little bit of surprise to not just them, but other people who've launched products in our space. And I think that's a really good sign, but can lead to some short-term pain. That said, we totally believe that Stably is going to be the first, not the only in any way. Being able to comment on timelines and who you can read between the lines about which ones we prefer, but at the same time, we don't really get to choose if other people want to integrate to the chain. So, you'll ultimately see, I think, a very wide list of various assets. Plus, we expect more wrapped and less trust wrapped types of on-ramps and off-ramps for things like Ethereum and Bitcoin.
All right, cool. Next one I had. Chia is hiring a Chinese technical community manager. Have we resolved that yet? I'll take that one. So we do have a Chinese technical community manager. They are just really good at what they do, and they're really good at a lot of other things. And so they're moving on to another part of the company. And so we're trying to backfill that role. We do have several candidates in the pipeline right now. We haven't really finished that process. We're talking to candidates. If you, the person submitting this, if you are interested in that role, we would love for you to apply as well. On Chia's website, if you go to chia.net, there's a careers link at the bottom. If you can apply there if you think that role would suit you. Like I said, we have a bunch of candidates we're talking to, but I'm always happy to see more candidates. We do hope to get that resolved one way or the other here within the next week or two. So if it does interest you, please apply sooner than later. Let's see what else I had. Another follow-up question I had on the Clover Dev Challenge. So to kind of rehash the answer I gave earlier, we had about 60 to 70 entrants. They are all either working in teams or individuals. The actual number of submissions we haven't calculated yet, so I can't give folks a direct answer on that. But just to kind of repeat, we're gonna have a final summary on the whole event in about 2 weeks from now. Sometime week after next, we'll start sharing information with a big announcement of here's everyone who participated, who kind of wants to share what they participated in general, and here's everyone who actually won. How that result will be framed and shown to everyone is going to kind of vary based on what the actual results are, and a couple of things that kind of have to be decided yet. But we're going to share with you guys all information around then. If you ask us questions between now and then, the answer is going to be well, we'll talk to you on like the 17th. Sorry, but we can't dole out piecemeal updates. We'd rather just have a campaign we have for this. So that's kind of the last time I'm gonna, both here in the AMA and over the next week, kind of talk about that event until we've actually finished our work on resolving that event. But we had a really great turnout. We're really happy with the 60 or 70 so teams that participated. We had some really great conversations in Keybase as they hashed about ideas. A lot of them bounced back and forth stuff off each other, and even I saw in a few cases folks were helping each other because what they were doing was completely different, but they had kind of cross-pollination understandings, and they had a lot of really help with each other. It was a really fun thing to watch happen. I look forward to doing something like this in the future that's much longer, over many days, with a larger group, because it was really cool seeing the community work on that. Let's see here. We've got, oh wait, nope, never mind. You already answered that one, Gene. Justin, given the proof of space and time is superior, their words, not mine, but I won't correct them, and that Chia plots can be reused to farm other cryptos that are based on forks of Chia, is there anything that we could be doing to better help those projects move forward and to also help evangelize proof of space and time with other blockchain technologies to which kind of leveraging some of this might be beneficial to them? It seems like more advocates from other chain technologies who kind of overlap with us might be beneficial.
So I'm going to borrow Gene's favorite thought experiment. You could theoretically fork proof of space and time into any proof of work blockchain tomorrow. There's no constraint there that you could swap your consensus to a different one. It would be a hard fork. So, I mean, honestly, if there was real like buy-in from that side to do a consensus swap, I think we would certainly be willing to commit dev resources to it. I certainly would be willing to commit whatever operational resources we would need to help them get that going. I think the large barrier to adoption for other blockchains like proof of work or proof of stake blockchains is a commitment to changing your consensus. A lot of these communities are very religious in their accepting of the one true coin or the one true truth about how blockchain runs, and that's distinctly a hard sell. I don't know if you guys have ever talked with, not to rail on Bitcoin too hard, but Bitcoin maxis on Twitter are kind of religious.
Bitcoin, no way. Bitcoin people are like, no, you don't understand. All the value comes from that. If we didn't have that, there would be no value.
The bigger the hole in the ozone layer, the more value generated.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe Dogecoin is more amenable to it, but
honestly, if Dogecoin people came to us and said, "Can you help us move to proof of space and time?" I'd be like, "Yeah, all in."
I did do some talking to some of them before, and I was the one who dropped the ball on it. So maybe you should try and pick that up. But it's been a low priority for us. So
there are a couple projects where we absolutely would be welcoming, and I think they aren't as religious about this underlying issue. So know that that's on the radar. And Bram and I made sure as we were launching pooling that you really could do this the right way and have sophisticated pooling on one of those chains.
I know I said I wasn't going to go back to the Clover Dev Challenge topic, but someone has asked, is anyone working on a cloud-based developer platform for Chia, ideally with a full node running? Yes. Have you heard of Clover? Justin, you want to talk about that one a little bit?
I mean, I think it's really neat. So the Clover people they've been developing this platform for quite some time. They demoed it for us a little bit ago when it was actually a little crunchier than it is now. They made some cool improvements since then. But it is a really whiz-bang system. One of the guys on my team was doing some smart coin development today on one of his hobby projects and like linking us to his Clover environment so we could kind of see what he was up to. It was really neat. So they've set up a system where you can have a just-in-time development environment where you can do smart coin or other smart contract development, and it has a full node and it runs on the test net, and it does all that stuff automatically, and you just write code and interact with it. And the barrier to entry for that is basically being able to write the software as opposed to having to be able to maintain and build an entire testnet ecosystem.
Okay. One question I'll answer real quick. Is Chia TK a subsidy, or are they licensing or trademark? Chia TK, like many of the companies out there who are pools or are other providing resources for Chia, they are licensing the use of Chia as part of their brand. They are one of the many companies who've reached out to us and said, we're making tools for Chia, we're making software for Chia, we're running a Chia pool, those various things. And we have kind of a conversation with them, and we give them some legal guidance on how they can and can't use the word Chia in their name. It's hard to create like a master index you can publicly share over who's got the right to leverage our name and who doesn't. So unfortunately, we don't have like an easy to find thing to look at that. But no, they're not a subsidiary of us, and they're not they're not affiliated with us as a business. They're just licensing their right to the name Chia to provide resources to the Chia community. That said, lots of people out there do have rights to use the name. If you ever see someone who attested doing so, but is doing something incredibly shady that you think is problematic, do bring it to our attention, because sometimes we have a really great relationship with someone and those organizations change hands and the new owners decide to do questionable things, and we don't always know because we've had a good relationship for a long time and things can change. So if you're ever in doubt and wonder, it's okay to ask us in Keybase. We may not have the answer off the top of our head, but we'll look into it for you. Going back to offer files, someone has asked, we've talked a little bit about how offer files are foundational. They are the start to people being able to do more decentralized stuff with offers. Do we consider them done at this point, or is there more changes and updates coming to offer files, or are they, for all intents and purposes, at least for the time being, a done product?
Offer files as they are now are a standard that will continue to be supported, is the intention. Someone earlier asked about more features where they're a bit malleable and flexible in exactly what their offers for. That'll be supported at some point. Working on AMMs for them, which can act as liquidity providers, which is related to offer files. So lots more stuff going on, a lot of stuff being done by the community in terms of putting stuff together. So yeah.
Okay. So we had a little conversation, I think, last week about blue boxes and kind of overselling people on the desire to have them help contribute blue boxes to the network and bring down that compactification percentage, or bring up the compactification percentage, depending how you calculate it. That little kind of warning that we had, is that issue resolved now? Where are we at on that?
It is and it isn't. So let's back up. There were some people who were losing sync, and what we did is tracked it down to a bug we had in the way that adding a updated proof of time to your peer could actually knock you out of sync. It is fixed in main. It will be fixed in 1.3. It is a kind of rare thing. It's not something you can easily accidentally create. A great volunteer group was trying to compactify the very top of the chain, which is a cool idea, but unfortunately made this much more common in its still very uncommon rate. They've paused, and as soon as we get 1.3 in everybody's hands, then we're going to ask them to start back up.
All right. We have about 10 minutes left before I start picking a few others here. If there's anything you guys very specifically want to answer that I'm not aware of, feel free to start right now. Shout out the one you want to talk about, and you can go into it. Otherwise, I got a few more I'm going to cover here. Bueller. All right, I'll just think about that a minute. Gene, this question from someone anonymous is, what's the main motivation for developing Chia?
So I think Bram and I both believe that like blockchains actually can solve real problems in the world, but that the current offerings had too much electricity, weren't really secure programming environments, or were illegal securities. And so you got to fix those really big three things to go build a platform that can be deployed globally to become the rails for money and finance.
Okay. This one kind of sounds like a question that JM might have asked just to make us feel guilty for not having him on the AMA so he could be here to answer it. Do we envision storage manufacturers running pools themselves, using free space on hard drives that they have sold with their own software pre-installed on the drive to make use of that space until needed?
So partially, yes. It would not surprise us at all that you'll be getting a copy of Chia when you buy a external drive or a NAS or a SAN. And then that copy of Chia in the future will be able to automatically find your free space and farm it on your behalf. Not as clear that the storage manufacturers, as we've kind of talked to them, want to run the pool, but that's where we like having really good pool telemetry for everybody. And what we may very well do is just make it so that you have a little toggle switch. Your toggle switch is either, I'm feeling lucky, I want to run for the lottery and I don't want to pool, or, I want to make a little money every so often, and we randomly put you into a well-known and well-regarded pool, and you're off to the races. But it really needs to be that simple. And I can tell you that the storage manufacturers are really excited about having that kind of differentiation in their products on the shelf.
Okay. You mentioned a few times a enterprise cat issuance tool. What's it actually meant for? Is there an actual enterprise asking for that solution to solve a particular problem we're trying to solve with it?
Yes. So right now, like you either issue this on the command line or you use the Chives tool. We need to have a far more ready for financial institution tool to be able to do that on a case by case basis. So just a shinier, easier to use by IT teams at a bank or at an investment bank.
All right. My favorite space, the developer community. We have a question. Roughly how many teams are building on Chia in stealth right now that we know of? And the answer is if they're in stealth, we don't entirely always know. There are quite a few. I myself personally have had conversations with, I'd say, 24 organizations that have not publicly alluded to anything of folks out there or what's going on. I can't speak to others here, but there's a few. There's quite a few. And that's just community developers, small orgs, that kind of stuff. That's not even speaking to like enterprise partners of ours or other major organizations that are talking to our biz dev team or those other teams as well for much, much bigger scale stuff. Anything you want to add to that, Gene, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, like I know 2 or 3 that I've spoken to that you don't know about either. So, there's that. And also I'll tell you about once a week, we are surprised by someone kind of appearing full form in, wow, they've got a Dex and a wallet and wow, it's nice. So it's exactly what we want to see. I think there's a lot more people working on things quietly than people are aware of. I'm really curious to see what the outcome in a couple weeks of or last 24 hours is going to be, because if anything, it taught a lot of people Chia Lisp, and I think that's one of the things we really liked about it. It was kind of a fun, interactive thing, and because we have employees across the entire world, it was 24 hours all from noon to noon, and we just kept handing the team off to different people in different places, and everybody had support the whole time. Pretty cool way to learn Chia Lisp.
So this is one I've been kind of ignoring because it didn't seem like the answer seemed kind of obvious. No, not really. But I also realize that I am nowhere near as smart as some of the people in this call. Bram, especially. I can't hold a candle to you, so I didn't want to assume that the answer is an obvious no. I'll give you a chance to kind of dive into this one. Someone has asked, is there ever a potential scenario for combining the concepts of torrents and Chia? Are there any at all useful synergies that haven't been discussed?
Oh man. Everybody, please stop trying to build Mojo Nation. Like, really, please stop. I mean, I feel like I beat this one to death in interviews 20 years ago. But bandwidth is very cheap. It doesn't act like a commodity. Trying to have a market for it doesn't work so well. And when you're talking about storage, the problem is that you always want archival storage. And when you do sort of hack together peer-to-peer storage things, they really aren't going to have good archival guarantees at all, because it turns out time passes at the same rate for everybody. And time, everyone, what are the chances that everyone in a given, that of everyone who's currently in a given room, one of them will be alive a year from now? The chances that they'll all be gone a year from now goes down exponentially as the number of people goes up. What are the chances that one of them will be alive 150 years from now? The chances don't change much at all as the number of people go up. So that's your problem. That's your problem with long-term storage. There are interesting storage and distribution related questions in blockchains, particularly around when you're referencing some external file or some information where there's a needed guarantee of publication that doesn't have quite the same insane level of security requirements as the actual blockchain itself does. How can that be provided? How can that be referenced by on-chain smart coin programming? Those are all really interesting questions right there that are sort of related. Although these days, the bandwidth necessary for the distribution is the least of your issues.
We do have some what we think are going to be novel solutions for that we're working on, but those are a bit more medium term to get right. Also, this kind of answers the other question of, would you do IPFS? No, we're not doing IPFS. We're not going to try to build Mojo Nation. Blockchains are not about storing large pieces of data. They're about storing information about data and checkpointing that data. That's where a data layer comes in, that there are some things that become very interesting to be able to kind of have as not really a layer 2, but is actually a place where data gets exchanged and transferred in a reliable and secure way that you can validate. There's some things we can do in that world we think are going to be more interesting. But durable storage we think is an institutional problem and not necessarily a technology problem.
Okay. Two here we'll kind of wrap up, and then, or two here we'll do, and then we'll kind of wrap up and call it a day. Is wrapped Bitcoin and wrapped Ethereum technically cats, or considered something else?
Yeah, they wrap in the form of cats. So they get locked up in something on their side and then get wrapped as a cat on Chia that you can then move around and have smart coins in the cat and yada, yada, yada. And then when you want it back on the other side, there's a retirement protocol of retiring the cats that are observed by the entity that's doing the redemption on the other side. And when you retire, you announce where it should go, and then the other side sends it to where you asked for it.
Okay. And then one last one for Bram. Over the holidays, we kind of had this little news spike of some interest around Mad Max creating his OpenCL VDF project. He started kicking off both his coin and then his OpenCL VDF that he was doing for the coin. Start bringing in GPUs, a few other things to it, and kind of going off in a whole new direction there. What do you think about his whole project and all the different components he's building for it?
I don't know. We're using proof of space and time because it's better. And I don't know what he's doing. I don't view most of these Chia forks as helpful to the project. They're kind of distracting.
Okay, fair enough. I think that pretty much. We'll close on this question. How many hours of sleep does everyone here on the call get on average?
Way more than I got last March.
Yeah, it's gotten a little better, but not a lot.
Yeah, I am not macho about sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation is bad for productivity and not something you want to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
However, I am a chronic insomniac and I have been completely slammed with work. So I've been struggling to get enough sleep.
But we now have enough of a team that usually people can get the sleep they should get finally, which means you get higher quality software and you'll hopefully have less chance of having 1.3.1.
Jordan, how much sleep were you getting before you joined Chia, and how much sleep are you getting now that you're at Chia?
I guess we'll see in the next couple of weeks. Yeah.
I think I know the answer is he's actually getting more sleep now than he was before, I believe, from what I understand.
Though I am turning the fire hose on him, so it's not exactly an easy thing.
Yeah. Well, as always, like my experiment I talked about in the beginning, if we extend this longer, do we end up covering everything or not? And it's about the same. We still have a little back. I think as long as we go, we'll always have extra questions. So we tried. But thanks everyone for joining us today. Both those of you here answering questions and everyone who came to ask questions. If you asked questions we didn't get to, my apologies. We should maybe start collecting these somewhere in a spreadsheet, and then we can just when we do an AMA, if we're we get asked this question 20 times and we've never gotten to it, let's just cover it up front before we get started. Maybe we can start doing something like that for the super commonly asked, never answered ones. But
maybe we could do a Reddit follow-up.
Yeah, we could do a Reddit follow-up to them too, or something along those lines. We'll look into finding ways to get more. Also, speaking of Reddit and AMAs, I know we do these live stream AMAs about once every 4 to 6 weeks, not quite monthly because of factors, but about that. I do want to start doing in between them a Reddit AMA. That's a bit more asynchronous. You got a whole day to drop in questions, and we got a whole day to provide answers, so we can kind of be more useful to people's times to get more stuff throughout the day, and you're not crunched in a window to ask us questions. So keep an eye out for one of those. I've been talking to the Reddit mods about how we could do some of those here soon. So maybe I was going to say next month in February, and I realized it became February a few days ago. Later this month, or actually next month, you might try to do one of those in Reddit here soon. So
that comments on how much sleep Jay's getting.
I'm okay on sleep. It's more I have colleagues who abuse my ADD nature and know that I'm doing this live stream right now, and I have 15 DMs from people I work with who all know what we're all doing right now, and they're still DMing me questions, and it just breaks my brain. So yeah. Anyways, thank you everybody for joining us today. It's been fun as always. And if you had to come in late to this and didn't catch the first half, all of this will be up on YouTube here in a few hours once it's done kind of processing the recording of this, and we'll get it up and you can watch whatever part you missed. As usual, we'll have the cool little timestamps and stuff and everything else. So other than that, we will see you guys next time we do a AMA, or if we do a live stream before then.